The great hall of the Varithi Council was silent. Hundreds of alien eyes watched the human standing in the center. The floor beneath him was made of white stone that reflected the bright blue light of the twin suns above. The banners of many species hung from the ceiling, symbols of peace, cooperation, and unity that had lasted only because of one stubborn, fragile species: humanity. Captain Elias Ward stood tall in his heavy silver armor, a soldier who had seen too many wars and buried too many friends. His face carried the calm look of a man who had learned how to control pain. His dark eyes, however, still burned with life, a rare thing among warriors. Across from him on the high platform stood emissary Soraya Vaughn of the Varithi Dominion. Her skin shimmered with violet scales, her long white robes flowing like water. She had once trusted him, once called him ally. But today her expression was cold, her golden eyes sharp with judgment. The council chamber buzzed with whispers. They were here to decide the future of the peace treaty, a fragile agreement between the human confederation and the alien races of this part of the galaxy. The peace had lasted only 2 years, and every day it hung by a thread. Elias took a deep breath. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We came to Vareth to help rebuild your cities, not to rule them. We've repaired your reactors, cured your diseases, and stopped your civil wars. Humanity has kept its word." Soraya tilted her head, her tone calm but cutting. "And yet, Captain, wherever humans go, chaos follows. You call it help. We call it control." The room grew colder. Every eye turned toward her. Elias frowned, but his voice remained steady. "Control? We bled beside your soldiers when the Keth swarms attacked. We lost entire fleets to protect this world. If that is control, then what do you call the thousands of humans buried under Varithi soil?" Soraya's jaw tightened. "I call it unnecessary. You humans never know when to stop. You believe your way is always right. You think your emotions make you strong, but they make you reckless." The words hit Elias harder than any bullet. For a moment he didn't speak. He just looked at her, the same alien who had once trusted him to save her people. The same one who now stood above him, ashamed of needing his kind. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "We fight because we care." "Then stop caring," Soraya replied sharply. "We never needed your kind." The silence that followed was endless. Even the hum of the light seemed to fade. For the first time in many years, Elias felt something deep inside him break. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had built shelters, carried wounded soldiers, and offered peace to those who hated him. His armor, shining and scarred, suddenly felt heavy, as if it no longer belonged to him. Slowly he reached for the clasps on his chest plate. The sound of metal unlocking echoed through the hall. Everyone watched as he removed the armor piece by piece, the chest plate, the shoulder guards, the gauntlets, until he stood in his simple black undersuit. No one dared move or speak. When the last piece of armor hit the floor, Elias looked up at Soraya. His voice was low but steady. "If that is truly how you feel, then humanity will leave. We don't force help on those who don't want it." Soraya opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. She hadn't expected him to surrender, not like this, not so quietly. He took one last look at the council, at the faces of species who had once called him friend. "You wanted a galaxy without humans," he said. "Now you'll have it." And then he turned around and walked toward the great doors. Each step echoed like thunder. The guards didn't stop him. Even they seemed frozen, watching the man who had fought for them all simply walk away. As the doors closed behind him, the silence returned, but it was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. Soraya stood still, staring at the empty space where Elias had been. The hall felt colder, emptier. The council members shifted uneasily. The elder among them, a creature with translucent skin and many eyes, finally spoke. "You have made a mistake, Soraya Vaughn. The humans were the glue of this alliance." But Soraya only stared at the floor. She didn't answer. Deep down, she already knew the elder was right. Outside the hall, Elias stepped into the open air of Vareth Prime. The twin suns hung low in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold and red. Ships moved in the distance, bright trails cutting across the horizon. He walked through the capital city, past alien civilians who stared at him with confusion and guilt. They had heard the rumors. Some bowed in respect. Others looked away, ashamed. Elias didn't speak to anyone. He just kept walking, each step taking him farther from the government district and closer to the human landing zone. At the spaceport, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Chen, stood waiting. She was young, sharp-eyed, and fiercely loyal. Her expression changed the moment she saw his empty hands and missing armor. "Sir, what happened?" she asked softly. Elias didn't answer at first. He looked at the Terran banner waving above the landing pad, the blue and white flag of Earth marked with the symbol of the United Colonies. For years it had represented hope. Now it felt like a burden. "Pack our things," he finally said. "We're leaving Vareth." Mara hesitated. "But sir, the peace treaty? The aid stations?" He shook his head. "They don't want us here, and we don't stay where we're not wanted." Mara bit her lip. "Sir, with respect, without us this place could fall apart." Elias gave a tired smile. "Then maybe they'll finally understand what we gave them." He walked past her toward the transport shuttle. His movements were slow, but there was a calm determination in them, the kind that comes from making a hard choice. As the engines roared to life, Elias looked out one last time at the city he had helped rebuild. The skyline glowed in the sunset, tall spires reaching for the stars. Somewhere out there, Soraya was probably still standing in that council chamber wondering if she had done the right thing. Elias didn't hate her. He didn't even feel anger. He only felt disappointment, because he had believed in her. He had believed in the dream of a galaxy where humans and aliens could stand side by side, not as enemies, not as saviors, but as equals. But maybe that dream was only his. The shuttle lifted off. The world below grew smaller, the city turning into light and shadow. Inside the cockpit, Mara glanced at him. "Where to, Captain?" Elias looked ahead at the endless stars. "Anywhere but here." In the days that followed, news spread across the galaxy. The humans have withdrawn. Their diplomats left the council. Their fleets pulled back from defense zones. Their engineers stopped maintaining alien worlds' infrastructure. At first, some celebrated. Finally, they said, the galaxy can move on without them. But soon things began to change. Supply routes broke down. Pirate groups rose again. Star systems that had relied on human technology started to fail. In the capital of Vareth Prime, emissary Soraya received endless reports. Food shortages, power failures, riots. The very systems that humans had built with care now faltered without their touch. Every night, Soraya stood at her balcony and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, Elias Ward was watching the same sky. She remembered the way he had looked at her before leaving. Not angry, not vengeful, but deeply sad. It haunted her. One evening, her aide approached quietly. "Emissary, the council asks if you will call for Terran assistance again." Soraya closed her eyes. "They would not come if I called." "I made sure of that." Her aide hesitated. "And if the humans were right? If we truly cannot hold this peace alone?" Soraya turned to face the night. Her voice was soft. "Then we will learn the hard way." Far away aboard a small human transport drifting beyond the galactic rim, Elias watched the stars fade into blackness. He sat quietly in the pilot's chair, the hum of the ship the only sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tag, the insignia of his armor. He turned it over in his hand, feeling the weight of what he had left behind. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if the galaxy would survive without humanity. But one thing he did know: he couldn't force peace on those who didn't want it. He placed the insignia on the dashboard and whispered, "Maybe one day they'll understand." Outside, a comet streaked across the void, a brief, brilliant light in the darkness. And Elias Ward, the man who had set down his armor and walked away CL. Weeks passed since Captain Elias Ward and his people left Vareth Prime. At first, the galaxy moved on as if nothing had changed. The alien governments filled their reports with confident words. Stability remains. The treaties will hold. We can manage on our own. But words are lighter than truth. And the truth came fast. The cracks began to show in the first month. The trade convoys slowed down. The Terran fleets had always protected the deep space lanes, but now those routes were open and vulnerable. Pirates, creatures who had hidden during the years of peace, rose again like hungry shadows. Merchant ships vanished in the void. Refugees flooded nearby planets. Each government blamed another. By the second month, reactors on 3 worlds began to fail. They had been built by human engineers, machines maintained by Terran hands, powered by Terran parts. Without them, the systems flickered and died. Cities went dark. No one said it aloud, but a quiet fear spread across the stars. They missed the humans. The Council in trouble on DEATHWORLD. The Great Council gathered again. The same hall where Elias had once stood now felt empty, though hundreds filled the room. Emissary Soraya Vaughn sat at the center, her face pale with exhaustion. Reports covered her desk: riots, food shortages, energy collapses. A gray-skinned delegate from the iron species slammed his clawed hand on the table. "You said we didn't need them." "Look around, Soraya. Half our colonies are falling apart." Another voice hissed from the shadows. "Humans caused this chaos when they left." Soraya raised her head. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "No," she said softly. "We caused it when we told them to go." The hall fell silent. No one argued. Everyone knew the truth. She stood and walked to the large window overlooking the capital. From there, she could see the skyline, half dark from power loss. Smoke rose from a district where citizens had begun fighting for food. For the first time in her life, Soraya felt something she had never understood before: regret. Far from the center while the council struggled, Captain Elias Ward lived far from it all. His ship, the Dawn's Rest, floated on the edge of known space between stars that most maps didn't bother to mark. Here, among the quiet asteroids and drifting light, humanity had built small colonies, tiny places of peace where people grew food, repaired old ships, and tried to forget the politics of the galaxy. Elias spent his days working with his hands again. He repaired broken oxygen pumps, built water filters, and helped miners fix their old drilling machines. He wore no rank, no armor, only a faded brown jacket and a calm expression. Children on the colony loved him. They called him Captain Eli, though he never told them who he used to be. To them, he was simply a kind man who could fix anything. But at night, when the children slept and the stars filled the black sky, Elias would sit outside his small cabin, staring up at the endless space above. He still remembered Soraya's words. "We never needed your kind." He had tried to let them go, but they echoed in his mind like a wound that never healed. A visitor from the past one evening, a strange ship entered orbit above the colony. It wasn't Terran. Its hull shimmered with purple metal, and its engines made a deep humming sound that Elias recognized instantly. A Verethi ship. The colonists gathered nervously. The Verethi were not enemies, but after what happened, no one trusted them. Elias stood near the landing pad, watching the ship descend. Dust and light filled the air as the landing gear touched the ground. The ramp opened and a tall figure stepped out, wrapped in a travel cloak. When the figure removed her hood, Elias froze. It was Lieutenant Arian Kale, one of Soraya's personal guards from DEATHWORLD. "Captain Ward," she said, bowing slightly. "I come with a message." Elias crossed his arms. "Didn't expect the Verethi to miss us so soon." Arian hesitated. "It's not the Verethi who sent me. It's me. I saw what's happening. The council is falling apart. People are dying." She looked around the peaceful colony. "You humans know how to build life from ashes." "We don't." Elias said nothing. He could see the desperation in her eyes. Arian continued softly. "And there's more. Emissary Soraya Vaughn. She's missing." Elias's calm expression changed slightly. "Missing?" 3 days ago, Arian said. "She went to a border planet to negotiate peace with one of the rebel groups. Her ship never returned." The crowd around them murmured. Elias looked away toward the horizon. "Maybe she found out the hard way what kind of galaxy this is without cooperation," he said quietly. Arian stepped forward. "Captain, please. You know how to find people. You know how to lead. You're the only one who can help us." Elias shook his head. "I walked away for a reason. The galaxy made its choice." Arian's voice broke slightly. "And now it's breaking apart. Maybe we made a mistake, Captain. But please, don't let her die because of it." Elias looked at her for a long time. He could see the same look in her eyes that he had seen in Soraya's once, a mixture of pride and fear. Finally, he sighed. "All right. Tell me where she was last seen. The journey begins." The next morning, the Dawn's Rest lifted off from the colony. Elias sat in the pilot's seat while Arian worked the scanners beside him. The ship hummed with life as they entered faster-than-light travel. Their destination, Korath Delta, a small planet near the edge of Varithi space. It was known for its mining colonies, and for being lawless since the humans left. Arian briefed him as the stars streaked by. Saraya went there to talk to the Rakari clans. They control the region now. Pirates, smugglers, raiders, humans used to keep them in line. Elias gave a small, humorless smile. Used to. As they approached the planet, the sensors flickered with strange signals. Multiple distress beacons, all overlapping. The surface below was covered in storms and smoke. Looks like hell down there, Arian muttered. Then let's go see what hell looks like without humans, Elias replied. Korath Delta, the shuttle entered the atmosphere, shaking as it pushed through thick clouds. Below, they saw the remains of mining cities, half-destroyed buildings, burning refineries, ships crashed in the dust. They landed near the ruins of a communication tower. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Elias grabbed his old sidearm from a storage locker. It was the first time he had touched it since leaving Vareth. Arian noticed. I thought you gave up being a soldier. I did, he said. But I didn't give up being human. They moved carefully through the ruins. Bodies lay in the streets, alien civilians, miners, guards. The symbols of the Rakari clans were painted on the walls. Then they heard it, faintly, from deep inside a half-collapsed building, a distress signal. Elias followed the sound and found a small transmitter under rubble. It repeated a single phrase in broken Varithi code. Arian's eyes widened. It's Saraya's beacon. Elias began pulling away the debris with his bare hands. Hours passed. Dust covered his face and arms, but he didn't stop. Finally, they found her. Saraya Vaughn lay trapped under metal beams, her robes torn and stained. She was weak but alive. Her golden eyes fluttered open when she heard Elias's voice. Elias, she whispered, disbelief and shame in her tone. You came back? He didn't answer immediately. He just knelt beside her and started cutting through the wreckage. Don't talk, he said simply. Save your strength. Tears mixed with dust on her face. After all I said and why? Elias's voice stayed calm as he worked. Because walking away doesn't mean I stop caring. Together, with Arian's help, they freed her and carried her back to the ship. The flight from Korath as soon as the Dawn's Rest lifted off. Enemy radar locked onto them. The Rakari had noticed. Ships rose from the planet's surface, chasing them through the clouds. Elias gripped the controls. Hold on. The old transport wasn't built for combat, but Elias flew like a man born for danger. The ship weaved through fire and debris, engines screaming. Arian fired the rear cannons, taking down one pursuer. Saraya, half-conscious, watched from the medical bed. For the first time, she truly saw what made humans different. Not their machines, not their armor, but their refusal to give up even when they had every reason to. After a long chase, the Dawn's Rest broke free into open space. The pirate ships fell back, their fuel exhausted. The stars ahead opened like a sea of light. Elias leaned back in his seat, exhausted but steady. Arian laughed in relief. You did it, Captain, again. He didn't smile. No, he said quietly. We just survived. There's a difference. The realization later, as the ship drifted in the quiet of space. Saraya woke again. Her voice was weak but sincere. I was wrong, Elias, she said. About you. About your people, he turned to her. It's not about right or wrong. It's about learning. She nodded slowly. The council is falling apart. The galaxy needs you. Elias looked out the window, the stars reflecting in his eyes. Then maybe it's time they learn to stand with us, not under us. Saraya smiled faintly. Would you help us rebuild? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, the once proud emissary now humble and human in her honesty. The galaxy had become quieter, too quiet. Where once trade ships filled the star routes, now silence ruled. Stations blinked out one by one. Whole worlds cut themselves off to survive alone. And on Vareth Prime, the proud capital of the Varethi Dominion, the silence would soon be broken by fire. The return it had been 3 weeks since Elias Ward rescued emissary Saraya Vaughn from the ruins of Korath Delta. Now, the Dawn's Rest approached Vareth once more, the same planet where he had once left his armor and his faith. The moment the EY blue sphere appeared on the screen, Elias felt his chest tighten. He hadn't planned to ever see it again. But this time he wasn't coming as a soldier. He was coming because the galaxy was burning. Soraya stood beside him on the bridge, her robes newly cleaned but her eyes full of guilt. "I told the council I would bring you," she said quietly. "They didn't believe me." Elias gave a small smile. "They'll believe you when they see me." The ship entered orbit, and the capital city came into view. The skyline that once shone with silver and crystal now looked scarred and broken. Fires burned across districts. Columns of smoke rose into the clouds. Arian Kale, who sat at the scanners, looked at them both. Multiple explosions across the planet. Military bases destroyed. Pirate ships detected in orbit. Elias frowned. "They've made it this far already?" Soraya's voice trembled. "The Rakari clans. They united after you left. No one stopped them." He nodded slowly. "Then we stop them now." The broken capital, they landed in what used to be the grand courtyard of the Varathi Council. The white stone was cracked, the fountains dry and the banners torn. Guards ran everywhere shouting orders. The air smelled of smoke and fear. As soon as the ramp opened, Varathi soldiers pointed their weapons. But when they saw Soraya step out with Elias behind her, they froze. "Stand down," she ordered. "He is with me." The soldiers hesitated but obeyed. One of the officers rushed forward. "Emissary, the enemy is breaching the outer shields. We can't hold them much longer." Soraya turned to Elias. "You said you don't wear armor anymore." "But can you still lead?" Elias looked around. Chaos, confusion, and panic. He didn't need armor for what he saw next. He saw what was missing. Leadership, strategy, hope. He took a deep breath. "Get me access to your command center, and someone bring me a map." The soldiers didn't question him. Something in his voice made them move. The old instincts return. Inside the command hall, lights flickered and alarms screamed. Holograms showed enemy ships descending through the atmosphere. Elias studied the map quickly. "They're hitting the supply lines first," he said. "Smart. They want to starve the defenders." A Varathi general, tall and proud, glared at him. "Human, you don't command here." Elias didn't even look up. "Then you command. I'll just save your planet." The general froze. Soraya stepped in. "Do as he says." Within minutes, Elias began organizing the defense. His voice was calm, direct, confident. He ordered small fighter groups to target enemy transports instead of the battleships. He redirected ground units to defend civilians instead of chasing raiders. His orders made no sense to the Varathi commanders at first, until they saw the results. The enemy's advance slowed. Civilians were evacuated safely. Supply ships made it through the chaos. For the first time in months, the defenders had hope. The Stormbreak's night fell over DEATHWORLD, though the fires made it glow like dawn. Elias stood on a damaged balcony, watching plasma bolts light up the sky. The enemy fleet had begun orbital bombardment, slow, deliberate strikes meant to break morale. Arian joined him. "You know this can't last. They have more ships, more guns." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why we don't fight where they expect us to." He pointed to the city's old industrial sector, a maze of factories and tunnels that the pirates hadn't targeted yet. "We use the tunnels to hit their landing zones. Small teams, fast strikes. We fight smart, not loud." Soraya appeared behind them, exhausted but determined. "You plan to lead them yourself?" He turned to her. "You think I'd send them where I wouldn't go?" She didn't argue. She just nodded. The fight for the city before dawn, Elias led a group of mixed soldiers, Varathi, Iron, even a few humans who had stayed behind, through the ruins. He wore no armor, only a tactical vest and a small rifle. Dust and ash covered his face. The city shook with distant explosions as they moved through narrow alleys. At the first enemy landing zone, they saw Rakari raiders unloading weapons. The Rakari were large reptilian creatures with scaled armor and brutal energy cannons. Elias gave a quick hand signal. 2 flanks, silent takedowns first. The soldiers obeyed. They moved like ghosts, taking down guards quietly, disabling ships with EMP grenades. But then a loud blast echoed. One of the soldiers slipped. The Rakari turned and opened fire. Elias reacted instantly. "Cover the civilians, move!" Bolts of plasma tore through the air. Elias ran forward, drawing enemy fire away from the others. He ducked behind a broken wall, fired 2 clean shots, and rolled to safety. A young Varethi soldier froze in panic as a Rakari aimed at her. Elias shoved her aside just as the bolt hit his arm. Pain shot through him, but he kept firing. Moments later, Arian took down the last raider with a clean headshot. Silence returned. "Captain!" Arian ran to him. "You're hit!" Elias looked at his bleeding arm and gave a small grin. "Just a scratch. Let's finish this." A lesson in humanity. Hours later, the sun rose over a city that was still standing. Barely. Elias limped into the council plaza, where hundreds of civilians had gathered. They looked at him with awe and disbelief. He wasn't wearing shining armor. He wasn't a hero from a story. He was just a man, tired, hurt, but still standing. Soraya approached, her voice trembling. "You saved them. You saved us." Elias looked at her. "No, we saved them. Together." She shook her head. "Without you, we would have fallen." He smiled faintly. "Then learn from it. You don't need humans to save you. You just need to remember what we taught you. To never stop fighting for each other." Soraya's eyes glistened. "And if we forget, then we'll remind you," he said softly. Before anyone could speak further, a loud explosion shook the ground. The sky darkened again. Arian shouted from a comm station. "New contact. A massive warship just entered orbit. Rakari flagship." Elias's expression hardened. "They're not giving up." Soraya turned to him, fear in her eyes. "We can't survive another strike like that." Elias looked at the sky. "Then we don't wait for it. We take the fight to them." The final decision, inside the command hall, Elias examined the data. The Rakari flagship was huge, twice the size of any Varethi vessel. Its orbital cannons were charging for a planet-wide strike. Arian looked at him. "Even with every ship we have left, we can't match it." Elias's voice was calm. "We won't, but we can blind it." He explained quickly. The old Terran defense satellites were still in orbit, inactive, forgotten. If they could reactivate even a few, they could overload the flagship's shields. "It's a long shot," Arian said. "It's a human shot," he replied. Soraya stepped forward. "I'll go with you." Elias turned. "No, you're the leader. You stay and protect your people." She looked at him sadly. "You protect them too, in your own way." Elias smiled faintly. "Then let's both do what we're good at." Into the fire, the Dawn's Rest blasted off once more, carrying Elias and a small crew toward orbit. Enemy ships filled the sky, but Elias's hands moved over the controls with calm precision. "Manual control engaged," Arian said. "Good," Elias replied. "Let's wake up some old friends." They reached the orbiting satellite grid, massive metal platforms drifting silently above the planet. Most were dark, but Elias found one still functional. He began inputting codes from memory. "Come on," he whispered. "Don't fail me now." The satellite's systems came alive with a low hum. Energy built up fast. Below them, the Rakari flagship fired its main cannon. A beam of plasma shot toward the surface, but halfway down it collided with a blinding burst from the reactivated satellite. The explosion lit the entire sky. Elias covered his eyes as the ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed. "Shields failing," Arian yelled. "Hold steady," he shouted. The flagship's shields broke apart, energy surging through its hull. A second later, its core detonated, scattering debris across the upper atmosphere. The threat was gone, but so was the Dawn's Rest. Its systems failed completely. Elias looked at Arian, then at the planet below. "We did it." Arian nodded, tears in her eyes. "You saved them again." He smiled softly. "We saved them." The ship drifted toward the planet, flames beginning to lick its wings. Elias closed his eyes and whispered, "For once, maybe they'll remember why we came." The aftermathon. The surface, Soraya, and the people of Vareth watched the explosion fade into the dawn. The Rakari fleet scattered and fled. A single human distress signal echoed from the sky, then went silent. Soraya fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Elias. For the first time in her life, she prayed, not to a god, but to the memory of a man who had shown her what courage truly meant. The fires over Vareth Prime had dimmed, leaving a gray, smoky sky. The city still bore scars from the Rakari attack. Broken buildings, shattered streets, and countless lives forever changed. But amidst the ruins, there was also a quiet calm. For the first time in months, people dared to hope. Emissary Soraya Vaughn stood atop the council plaza, her eyes scanning the recovering city below. The humans had saved them, again, and it was all because of a man who had once walked away. Elias Ward limped beside her, his clothes torn and stained from the battles. His face was streaked with soot, but his calm eyes carried a quiet strength that the Varethi could not ignore. Even without armor, without fleet support, he had made a difference. Soraya swallowed her pride and spoke softly, almost to herself. "I was wrong, Elias, about everything." He glanced at her. "About me? About your council? About this planet?" "All of it," she whispered. Her golden eyes were full of shame. I thought humans were dangerous. That you would always cause chaos. I never saw what you truly were capable of. Not the weapons, not the strategy, but the heart." Elias studied her carefully. There was a long pause before he spoke. "You had every right to doubt us. You had every reason to think we were reckless. But I was cruel," Soraya said, her voice trembling. "I told you. We never needed you." She stopped, unable to finish. The words stuck in her throat, heavy with regret. Elias did not answer immediately. He looked toward the recovering city, toward the people returning to their homes, helping one another. The Varethi soldiers were repairing damaged machinery, civilians were clearing debris, and the faint sound of children laughing could be heard from the streets. "Sometimes," Elias said finally, "people don't see the value of something until it's gone. Maybe that was the lesson you had to learn." Soraya's gaze fell to the ground, and the lesson was painful. "Yes," he replied. "For you, for your people, and for the galaxy." Rebuilding trust over the next few days, Elias worked alongside Soraya and the council to restore order. He moved through the city with quiet efficiency, giving directions, showing simple but effective solutions to rebuild supply lines, repair power grids, and protect civilians. The council watched him, some in awe, some in unease. The humans had left once, but the galaxy had reminded everyone of their importance. Now Elias didn't just command respect, he inspired it. Soraya walked beside him through the city streets. "I don't understand," she said softly. "You came back even after we rejected you. Even after I insulted you," Elias shrugged. "I didn't fight for glory. I didn't fight for praise. I fought because people needed help. That's what humans do. We don't abandon those we care about." Her golden eyes widened. "Even after I said—" "What I said?" Elias smiled faintly. "Especially after." The words struck Soraya deeply. She realized how wrong she had been, how pride had blinded her. The humans had proven something far more powerful than firepower. The ability to forgive, the ability to act with courage even when it was inconvenient, even when it was unappreciated. The council meeting, Soraya called a council session in the partially rebuilt hall. For the first time, Elias addressed the assembly. He stood without armor, without weapons, simply as a human speaking from the heart. "Council members," he began, "the galaxy is bigger than any one of us. It is fragile, yes, but also resilient. When we left, you believed you could manage on your own, and in some ways you have. But you have also learned that strength is not just measured in fleets or weapons. It is measured in courage, in compassion, and in the willingness to help one another." The delegates listened, some with disbelief, some with shame. He continued, "I do not demand your trust. I do not demand your loyalty. But I do ask you to learn to value life, to protect the innocent, to understand that sometimes strength is quiet, sometimes it is patient, and sometimes it is selfless." Soraya stood beside him, her hands folded. She watched the council members exchange uneasy glances, realizing how human words carried a weight they had long underestimated. After Elias finished, The hall remained silent. Then slowly one elder spoke. Perhaps. We were too proud to see the truth. Another nodded. Perhaps. We have been blind. Elias met their gaze evenly. Then open your eyes. The galaxy is waiting, and time will not forgive hesitation. A personal moment. Later, as the city quieted, Soraya walked with Elias to the edge of the plaza. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the ruins with shades of gold. I owe you more than I can say, she whispered. You saved me, and my people, twice. Elias shook his head. I did what needed to be done. You don't owe me anything. But I do, she insisted. I insulted you. I doubted you. I pushed you away. He looked at her calm and steady. Words are easy. Actions matter. You're learning that now. That's enough, she studied his face. There was no pride, no desire for revenge, only quiet strength. She had underestimated humans for too long. Why do you do it? She asked finally. Why risk everything for us? Elias took a deep breath, looking toward the horizon. Because someone has to care. Because someone has to act when others can't. Humans don't always fight for glory. Sometimes we fight because it is the right thing to do. Because someone has to stand up. Because if no one else does, who will? Soraya lowered her head, understanding finally dawning on her. And yet, you walked away before, why? He smiled faintly, almost sadly. Because sometimes to show strength, you have to walk away first. You have to let people see what they're losing. Only then do they truly understand value. Only then do they grow. Teaching the council over the next weeks, Elias helped Soraya train her council and military leaders. He taught them strategy, yes, but also patience, compassion, and foresight. He reminded them that victory was not measured by destruction, but by protection. That leadership was not power, but responsibility. That courage was not in fighting, but in choosing when to fight. Even the most stubborn delegates began to listen. Slowly, they started to rebuild not just the city, but their own understanding of leadership and trust. Soraya watched him quietly. She had called humans reckless. She had feared them. But now she saw the truth. Humans were more than their weapons, more than their ships. They were capable of inspiring hope where none existed. The apology one evening, as the stars rose above the city, Soraya found Elias alone in the ruins of the old council chamber. She approached cautiously. Elias, I want to say it properly this time. I am sorry for my words, for my arrogance, for doubting you and your people. Elias turned, eyes reflecting the starlight. You don't have to apologize, Soraya. The past is the past. We only work with what's in front of us. But I must, she insisted. I must acknowledge that I was wrong. I was proud, I was foolish, and I hurt you. I don't want to carry that shame any longer. Elias nodded. Acknowledging it is enough. Now let's focus on what matters. Saving your people and rebuilding the galaxy. She looked at him, her voice trembling with relief. Thank you for forgiving me, for staying even when I rejected you. He gave a small smile. Humans never walk away when it matters most. But sometimes walking away teaches others the value of what they have. For the first time, Soraya truly understood him. She saw not just the soldier, but the man, the human, who had taught her more than she had ever expected to learn. The promise as the night deepened. The city below glowed with renewed life. People worked together to repair homes, distribute food, and clear debris. Children laughed despite the scars of war. Soraya stood beside Elias once more. Will you stay? She asked softly. He looked at her, then at the horizon. For now. To help, to teach, to remind this world that hope still exists, she nodded. I think the galaxy will remember you. Elias's eyes reflected the distant stars. I hope they do. But even if they don't, that's not why we act. We do it because it's the right thing. Because someone has to. The galaxy was breathing again. Slowly, painfully, it began to heal. DEATHWORLD, once scorched by fire and torn by chaos, now glimmered with rebuilding efforts. Civilians and soldiers worked together, guided by emissary Soraya Vaughn and the lessons they had learned from Elias Ward. Even the smallest acts of kindness, children sharing water, neighbors clearing debris, engineers repairing broken ships, carried a human touch they had never seen before. Humanity's presence lingered not as invaders or rulers, but as teachers and guardians. Yet Elias Ward was not present in every street or corridor. He did not linger in victory ceremonies or parades. For him, the work was never about praise. It was about moving forward, ensuring the galaxy learned the right lessons. And when his part was done, he would leave again. A quiet morning, Elias stood on a hill overlooking the capital. The city shimmered in the first light of dawn, smoke gone, skies clearing. People walked freely, and children played near fountains he remembered from his first visit. Beside him, Arian Kale, who had become both ally and friend, stood silently. She had grown to understand him in ways no one else could. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked quietly. Elias smiled faintly. "Yes, but not from fighting. From seeing what could be lost when people forget what matters." Arian glanced at the bustling city below. "They've learned a lot from you." "From humans," he nodded. "I hope so. But the galaxy has a long memory, and a short patience. They'll need reminders." She turned to him. "And will you stay to remind them?" Elias looked out to the horizon. Beyond the planet lay the stars, endless and inviting. "Not forever. Sometimes the lesson is learned best when the teacher leaves." She frowned. "Leaving again?" "Yes," he said softly. "Walking away doesn't mean I stop caring. It means letting them grow, even if it's hard." The council's recognition inside the rebuilt council hall, Soraya prepared a ceremony. Delegates from all over DEATHWORLD had gathered. They wanted to honor Elias Ward not as a soldier or savior, but as a human who had reminded them of courage, compassion, and hope. When he arrived, Elias did not wear armor. He wore simple clothing, his hands scarred, his face tired. Yet every eye in the hall followed him. Respect was quiet but absolute. Soraya stepped forward. "Captain Elias Ward," she began, her voice carrying through the chamber. "The people of DEATHWORLD and the Council recognize what you have done. You have saved us not once but twice. You have reminded us that strength is not just in weapons or power, but in heart and courage. For that we thank you." Elias inclined his head. "I do not need thanks," he said. "I only ask that you remember the lessons. Protect each other. Lead with compassion. Fight when necessary, but never forget why you fight." A silence followed, deep and reflective. Every council member, every soldier, every citizen present understood that he spoke not as a hero, but as a human, as someone who had taught them the most valuable lesson of all. Hope cannot be demanded. It must be earned and nurtured. A personal goodbye. After the ceremony, Elias walked through the city streets. Civilians greeted him, some bowing slightly, others just nodding in silent gratitude. Children ran to him asking questions, wanting to hear stories of far-off worlds, of battles fought, of courage in the face of impossible odds. He smiled and answered gently, teaching lessons quietly without glorifying himself. Every word, every gesture reminded them that strength came from unity, from care, and from refusing to give up. Eventually, he reached the outskirts of the city, where Soraya waited. She had come to see him one last time. "You're leaving again," she said, her voice calm but tinged with sadness. "Yes," he replied. "And you know why?" She nodded slowly. "I do, but I want to thank you. Properly this time. For staying when I doubted you. For saving my people when I said we didn't need you. For showing me what humans truly are." Elias looked at her, and for a brief moment the distance between alien and human seemed irrelevant. "I don't need thanks," he said. "I only hope you remember, and that you teach others the same." Soraya's golden eyes glistened. "I will, I promise," he smiled faintly. "Then we're done here." A final lesson. As he prepared to board the Dawn's Rest, Arian approached. "Do you ever think about staying? About building a place for yourself instead of always moving?" Elias paused, running a hand over the worn metal of the shuttle. "I have a place, but it's not a city or a council. My place is where people need me, where lessons need to be taught, where hope must be reminded." She shook her head, smiling despite the sadness. "Humans, always leaving but always remembered," he nodded. "That's how we survive. That's how we grow." The engines hummed. The shuttle lifted off the ground, leaving the city below. From the hill, Soraya and Arian watched it rise, a small silhouette against the brightening sky. The people below began to cheer, not for the arrival or departure of a fleet, but for the man who had reminded them of what it meant to be human. The galaxy beyond the stars stretched before him as the Dawn's Rest left DEATHWORLD's orbit. Elias didn't know where he would go next. A distant planet, a war-torn world, or a forgotten corner of space. It didn't matter. Humanity had a role to play, not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers, protectors, and reminders of courage. Even as he traveled, reports reached him from across the galaxy. Systems slowly stabilizing, trade resuming, pirates retreating in fear of organized resistance, civilians rebuilding their homes. Humans may not have been the galaxy's rulers, but they had become its heartbeat, quiet, relentless, and unstoppable in the most human way possible. A quiet reflection, Elias sat in the cockpit, hands resting on the console. He looked at the stars stretching infinitely ahead and thought about the journey that had begun months ago. Harsh words, a council's mistrust, and a galaxy that had almost fallen apart because it underestimated humanity. He remembered Soraya's words, "We never needed your kind." And he remembered his own choice, to walk away, to let them see what they were losing. Now he realized that walking away had been as important as staying. It had taught them humility. It had reminded them of what mattered. A smile crept across his face. "Sometimes," he whispered, "the hardest lessons are the ones people learn on their own. I just make sure they survive long enough to learn them." The endless horizon, the shuttle moved deeper into space. Stars streaked past as faster-than-light engines propelled them forward. The galaxy was wide, full of dangers, full of wonder, and full of possibilities. Elias knew there would be more conflicts, more worlds in need, and more people who doubted humanity. But he also knew one truth that had guided him through every battle. Humans do not give up. They do not abandon what is right. And when the moment comes, they stand tall, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. Far below, Vareth Prime continued its recovery. Soraya and her people would remember, and they would teach others what humans had shown them. And somewhere out there, Elias Ward, the man who had set down his armor and walked away, looked toward the stars, ready for the next lesson the galaxy would demand of him. The man who walked away had returned only to remind the universe that sometimes courage is quiet, sometimes hope is invisible, and sometimes the greatest heroes are those who leave without fanfare, leaving only the memory of what is possible.